Please be seated. On behalf of the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, my name is Doug Bradburn. I'm the president and CEO of George Washington's Mount Vernon, and it's my great honor to welcome you to Mount Vernon, the home of George Washington, the father of our nation. I want to thank, Excellent. It's an easy audience today. This is good. I want to thank our Navy band for their wonderful playing today, and you'll hear them throughout. Let's give them a big round of applause. And I want to particularly mention some special guests who are here with me today on the stage. The Ambassador of France to the United States, His Excellency Laurent Bili, Madame Bili, and the Secretary of the Navy, Secretary Carlos del Toro. This is a special day, and I'm not going to steal anyone's thunder. We're going to have a special announcement, but it allows us to celebrate and reflect on our important and long alliance and shared values of the American and French republics. Both of our national aspirations were born in revolution, and we both aspire to be exceptional nations. Neither of us are perfect, and because friends can point out imperfections, we are very good friends as well. We regularly help and encourage each other to live up to our lofty ideals. But I do think it's important to remember that many great advances in humanity's growth, meaning the defense of freedom, have come when America and France have worked together, and we have neither been as great alone as we have been together. Now, it is not hyperbole to note that the United States would not have won our national struggle for independence without French aid. And here at Mount Vernon, the most visceral way to find that connection is through the long story of the relationship between General George Washington and the Marquis de Lafayette. Now, I was going to tell you all about it, but when I was coming through the Grove, I noticed we had two experts here, and I'd like you to welcome them onto the stage. General Lafayette and General Washington are here with us today. Please.
Sir.
Looking good, gentlemen.
Thank you, monsieur.
Good afternoon.
Bonjour à vous tous.
It's a pleasure to be in your company today. And I can think of no one I would more likely be standing here before to praise than the good Marquis. We were speaking a bit earlier, and I do recall very much so that when I first heard that from France we had a new general who was 19 years old, this was quite a dilemma. I had officers who very much so wished to see their promotions occur, and suddenly they heard there is now a new general, and he is French, and he is 19, and has never seen a battle. And so I had before me a conundrum of what should occur. How should I place this man? But I was trying to recall the details of how we first met.
How can you forget, Your Excellency? It was in Philadelphia. It was in the City Tavern in the summer of 1777, shortly after my arrival. I arrived in Philadelphia, waving my letters of recommendation from Dr. Franklin in the face of the Congress, and they had no notion of what to do with me. Who is this young Frenchman who claims to be entitled to a commission as a major general in the Continental Army? When I was at last granted an audience before them, I stood before them as I stand before you and said that after all of the journey that I had made, I wished only for two small favors. The first is to serve your cause for independence and liberty, and the second is to do so at my own expense as a volunteer.
That I am sure the Congress heard.
Yes, yes, Your Excellency, but of course they heard the word volunteer and assumed that I would merely be of no expense to them, a decorative rank, and so they made me a major general at 19 years old, but a major general who commands no troops and who serves without pay and who performs the duties of an aide-de-camp. This is what you Americans may call un cheval d'une couleur différente, n'est-ce pas? A horse of a different color. Very unusual on either side of the Atlantic.
Indeed, sir, and I do recall that my solution, knowing that since we wished very good relations with the French, and yet we had to make sure that you were put in both a position where you might be kept safe, but also would be of honor. My final solution was to ask you to be an aide-de-camp, but I recall now that I made quite a mistake when it came to my choice of words.
Yes, Your Excellency. When we dined for the first time at the City Tavern in Philadelphia, everyone was distracted by your presence. It seemed to speak of history, and there I was, but a young lad of 19 in a fancy new uniform, and thinking you must have considered me nothing more than a young puppy dog that had wandered in off the street, but you spoke to me very kindly, and I remember you complimented me on the service and sacrifice that I had made, and you invited me to call the quarters of the Commander-in-Chief my home as a member of His Excellency's family.
Which is how I refer to all of my aides-de-camp. They are part of my military family.
Yes, but at this time I spoke very little English, and I only understood the word famille, which refers to relatives of the blood, and I believed it was His Excellency's intention to adopt me as his son, right then and there. And of course, what else could I do, Your Excellency, but readily accept?
The Marquis is of such a good nature that he, in fact, did accept the offer. Although I must say that as time has passed, both I and my wife have come to think of you as a member of our family.
And you, Your Excellency, have become as much a father to me as I have ever known, and how pleased and honored I am to call Mount Vernon my home away from home as well.
Indeed, we even keep a room with your name upon it for that very purpose.
I sincerely hope so, Your Excellency.
And I can tell you that as much as I was intent upon keeping the Marquis safe and distant from battle, it was not long, but months, was it not, before we found ourselves in the field. And as the battle had turned against us, you asked if you might come and rally the troops. And unfortunately, you did not stay out of the fray.
No, Your Excellency. I, even with my limited grasp of English, I could tell that things were not going very well for our side on the banks of the Brandywine Creek. It was scarce weeks after my arrival in Philadelphia, and for my trouble, I received a musket ball through my left calf. And suddenly, I became part of the retreat that I had been working to prevent. But although my memories from this day are admittedly and perhaps understandably hazy, I remember Your Excellency standing above me with your personal physician, instructing him to care for me as though I were your own son, for you loved me the same. And this sustained me throughout my recovery, Your Excellency. I could not wait to return to your side.
And the service that we have seen. Now, you must recall that the Marquis came over and volunteered as a member of our army. We had others that were French officers that came over and aided us, and in fact, an entire French army that came over and aided us. But the Marquis served specifically in our army. And so you may note that in his hat, as in mine, we have two cockades, the black and the white. And that is to show our alliance as the French came on our behalf, and not for some small part of the fact that you, Marquis, went before them and requested that they see the justness of our cause.
I have only ever spoken of the justness of our cause, Your Excellency. However, any influence I may have held at the court at Versailles is perhaps greatly exaggerated by the American journalists. Whatever credit I may claim, I do so with great honor, Your Excellency.
Well, I can tell you time and time throughout the war, there was no one more loyal to our cause and to the cause of liberty than the Marquis. And so I am very glad to be standing on a stage giving honor to him today, because great honor is due.
You are very kind, Your Excellency. The honor is mine.
And now, as you are seated in the sun, I think someone will stand up and give a speech for some 4 hours. Hopefully not, but I thank you for your time today. It is a great honor to be with you, and I hope you enjoy the balance of your day.
Je vous souhaite tous et toutes une très agréable continuation de votre journée. Merci beaucoup.
I have no idea what you said, sir, but that sounded far better than what I had said.
Well, that was a special treat. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for joining us. You're looking good after all these years. Now, I have another great public servant to announce. In this case, it is my good friend, the Honorable Carlos del Toro, who's serving as our 78th Secretary of the Navy. As Secretary, he's responsible for over 900,000 sailors, Marines, reservists, and civilian personnel, with an annual budget exceeding $250 billion. Born in Havana, Cuba, he immigrated to the United States with his family as refugees in 1962. He received an appointment to the U.S. Naval Academy, where he earned a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. He was commissioned as a surface warfare officer upon his graduation in 1983. And after a 22-year naval career, which included a series of critical appointments and numerous tours of duty at sea, including the first commanding officer of the guided missile destroyer USS Bulkley. After retiring at the rank of commander, Secretary Del Toro founded SPG Technology Solutions in 2004, one of the great leading companies in American defense. Now, most importantly to me, he's a great family man. Secretary Del Toro and his wife have 4 children and granddaughter. He's a man of great integrity. As I said, I'm honored to call him a friend. Let's give him a big Mount Vernon welcome. Mr. Secretary, welcome to Mount Vernon.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. Well, for my first statement, let me say that I'm also very wise. General, I assure you that my speech is not 4 hours. It is but a mere 8 minutes. And traveling back and forth in time, obviously, from the past to the present and then back perhaps to the past later on today, it is a bit problematic because my own aide-de-camp, Lieutenant Commander Acosta, approached me earlier wondering why I couldn't make him a Rear Admiral at the age of 28. Commander Acosta, I perhaps can adopt you, but I can't make you a Rear Admiral, unfortunately. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Doug, for that introduction. I would also like to thank each and every one of you here who joined us this morning, including the representatives from our diplomatic community. And I'm deeply honored to have several ambassadors here. Ambassador Pierce from the UK, thank you for getting over the skirmish that we've had and joining us here at Mount Vernon today. We have the ambassador from Mexico here today and the ambassador from Ukraine. And perhaps it's worth just taking a few seconds to recognize that as our nation struggled nearly 250 years ago, Ukraine today also struggles to maintain or to continue to earn its freedom. And Madam Ambassador, know that the United States supports Ukraine today and will continue to support your efforts as long as it takes. We are also deeply honored to have representatives here in the naval attachés from Argentina, Australia, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Denmark, Ecuador, Egypt, Estonia, France, Germany, Greece, Iceland, India, Italy, Mexico, Netherlands, New Zealand, Peru, Republic of Korea, Singapore, Sweden, Ukraine, the United Kingdom, and Uruguay. Welcome. Our country remains free today because for centuries, Americans from all walks of life have dedicated themselves to our nation's founding ideals and principles set forth in both our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. Our fellow citizens who volunteer for public service, just like these members of the Navy Band here with us today, including all those that serve also in other places throughout the United States Navy and Marine Corps, ensure that our way of life, the peace and prosperity we enjoy here at home, is defended every single day against the threats and the challenges that we face throughout the globe. As the 78th Secretary of the Navy, I'm extremely proud to lead the nearly 1 million sailors, Marines, and civilians across the Department of the Navy and the work that they undertake to ensure our nation continues to thrive. And as a maritime nation, maintaining a strong Navy and Marine Corps is critical to our national and economic security. In our time together this morning, as we prepare to celebrate the 4th of July tomorrow, I would like to spend a few moments reflecting on our founding fathers, our history with a strong naval ally, and why it is imperative that we continue to field a strong fleet and a force to confront the challenges that we face today. As we reflect on our nation's founders, it is important to recognize that most were not born here in the United States. They were immigrants, just like me. And much like myself and my family, they left their homes in search of a better life for many different reasons. They came here to the New World to establish a new country not ruled by sovereigns, but to be governed by a democratically elected government that, above all else, would respect the inherent rights of life, liberty, and justice for all. And 247 years ago tomorrow, they boldly declared the citizens of the 13 British colonies on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean were going to seize the opportunity for a chance at self-determination. Our founders risked everything for the birth of our nation. They risked fortunes, property, and the most valuable thing of all, they risked their very lives. The Continental Army and Continental Navy, manned by ordinary citizens from across the colonies, came together and fought valiantly for the freedoms that you and I enjoy today. But it is also important to recognize they did not just seize victory against the British forces alone. They found a powerful ally in France, who lent the might of its military forces to help turn the tide of the Revolutionary War in our favor. Our fledgling nation's alliance with France came into existence primarily because of the close personal relationships between men and women as well who believed in our cause. And no relationship is a better example of this than what you saw between President George Washington and France's Marquis de Lafayette just a few minutes ago. As you heard, the Marquis de Lafayette's friendship meant a great deal to President Washington. They shared a bond comparable to that of a father and son, as was just stated. These two men, Washington and Lafayette, fought side by side in battles across the colonies in America's struggle for independence. They endured the harsh winter at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, with the future of our nation filled with uncertainty. And yet they kept the faith alive that their cause was just and that our Continental Army and Navy would ultimately prevail. Last week, I was in Paris, France, the capital of one of our oldest allies, to announce that our Navy's newest warship, the USS Lafayette, FFG 65, will be named in honor of the Marquis de Lafayette. And we are deeply honored to have the USS Lafayette's co-sponsor, Mrs. Sabine Bili, present with us this morning. The USS Lafayette, for her entire time in service, will serve as a testament to the enduring relationships that we share with our nation's first major ally, France. I mention our closeness with our French allies because, again, as history has proven to us repeatedly, we are here today celebrating our freedom because of our allies. The French Navy played a critical role in the American Revolutionary War. The Comte d'Estaing, with his squadron of 17 ships, departed Toulon, where I was just there with my wife Betty 2 days ago, en route to the Delaware Bay, not far from Washington, D.C., to counter the British Royal Navy. Likewise, the Comte de Grasse sailed his fleet from Brest, France, to the Chesapeake Bay, enabling the decisive defeat of Lord Cornwallis and his British troops at Yorktown, Virginia. This combined American-French victory set the stage for the signing of the Treaty of Paris 2 years later. And since that time, our naval relationship with France has only grown stronger. During World War I, an American fleet of over 400 ships, sailed across the Atlantic, moving personnel and cargo necessary to support our French allies, both at sea and ashore. Notably, our two navies worked together to defend Atlantic shipping against the threat posed by German U-boats along with the British, thus keeping vital maritime supply lanes open. And in World War II, the reconstituted French fleet served with distinction, supporting Allied landings to liberate French ports such as Toulon and Marseille and many others. Today, our two navies continue to sail together around the world from the Indo-Pacific to the Mediterranean, supporting one another in our common mission to keep the global maritime commons open for all to use. Partnerships like the one that we have with France are critical to our Department of the Navy, and we look forward to its continued evolution in the years to come. In closing, as we look towards the future of our great nation, it is imperative that we continue to maintain a strong Navy and our Marine Corps team, supported by our close allies and partners. And when I'm often asked what's the difference between us and them, whoever those adversaries might be, it would be easy to simply put up a long list of our allies and partners, the 26 nations that are here today. President Washington recognized the need for a strong Navy, signing into the law the Naval Act of 1794, which provided funding for our nation's first 6 frigates to ensure America's ability to conduct commercial maritime activities without harassment by other nations. The USS Lafayette and our entire naval fleet continue on in this mission to support our economic and our national security, and we look forward to the day that she will proudly sail alongside France's Marine Nationale. Thank you again for joining me this morning as we celebrate our nation's independence, as well as our enduring bonds with the people of France, England, and that of all of our allies today. And now it is my honor to introduce France's ambassador to the United States of America, His Excellency, Mr. Laurent Bili. Mr. Ambassador, we are grateful to have you here with us this morning as we recognize the close ties between our nation. The podium is yours, sir.
Mr. Secretary, dear colleagues, dear all. Mr. Secretary, I can't agree more of what you just said, and especially as Vilnius summit is approaching, to the need to support our friends from Ukraine. On behalf of France, I would like to thank you for calling the future Constellation-class guided missile frigate the Lafayette. An excellent and highly symbolic name. Lafayette was an hero in both the Old World and the New World, an iconic figure in the fight for freedom and democracy. His name, associated with George Washington, reminds us of the bond that has existed between our countries since the Revolutionary War. In 2024, we will celebrate the bicentennial of Lafayette's farewell visit to the United States at the invitation of President Monroe, as well as the 80th anniversary of D-Day, a day that will live on forever in France's collective memory. The decision to name this new vessel the Lafayette also reflects the fact that the alliance between our two nations is firmly focused on the future. Mr. Secretary, on a personal level, I am grateful to you for choosing two extraordinarily talented women to co-sponsor this new US Navy vessel. Denise Bauer, the American ambassador to France, with whom I have the great pleasure of working closely to strengthen French-American relations. And of course, my wife, Sabine. As far as Sabine is concerned, it's possible that my judgment isn't 100% impartial. But I'm certainly entitled to it, as it is rooted in 34 years of peaceful coexistence with a judge who is passionately committed to her work and its importance in maintaining our social equilibrium. But I've been already going too long, and it's time to hand you over to the sponsor, or co-sponsor, Madame Sabine.
Mr. Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for choosing me as a co-sponsor of the Lafayette, la co-marraine de the Lafayette. As a French citizen, I'm particularly proud to be part of this adventure, which will further strengthen the already robust ties between our two navies. You can be absolutely sure that I will do my best to honor and live up to my solemn connection to this ship. Being something of a perfectionist and very curious by nature and by my job, I have already done a bit of research into this next generation frigate, and I was deeply impressed. The future Lafayette belongs to the very latest class of US Navy vessels. This ultra-modern ship, which is nearly 500 feet long, weighs more than 7,000 tons, and has a crew of 200, will make a significant contribution to US defense. I'm eagerly looking forward to meeting her first crew and her commander, whom I can only encourage to adopt Lafayette's motto, Cour non, why not? I know they will put it to good use, just like the young officer who set sail for the New World at the age of 19 to defend the cause that was so dear to his heart. The Lafayette will be, I believe, the fourth US Navy vessel to bear this prestigious name, which she will share for the next few years with the French frigate. And I'm sure it won't be the last in either the French or the US Navy. Thank you once again for doing me this honor. Long live the French-American friendship. Vive l'amitié franco-américaine.
Thank you, Madame Bili. Thank you, Ambassador Bili. Thank you so much, Secretary Del Toro, as well. I've been asked to share a few thoughts as a way of closing for this wonderful announcement and ceremony. And all I can say that it is a great fitting name for one of the great new frigates in our Navy, Lafayette. And I hope very much, Mr. Secretary, that the young sailors that sail on this great ship, who will be the same age as Lafayette was when he left France for the great adventure in the fight for liberty, I wish them the same success in helping to make the world a better place by adhering to the strict integrity, character, and ideals of the best of our servicemen and women in the cause of liberty. And I agree with you, Mr. Secretary, that's not hyperbole at all, that the United States and France need to remain strong friends as we have from the very beginning. Lafayette's boundless energy and courage, his romantic enthusiasm for the cause of liberty, who bled in the cause of American freedom, is critical to our shared story. Of course, one of the emblems of his story here at Mount Vernon relates to his place at the birth of democratic freedom in the French Revolution, which would go on to help transform and create the modern world with the belief in self-governance, the rule of law, liberty, and equality. He, of course, was the commander of the National Guard in Paris when the Bastille was overthrown, July 14th, 1789, which your own great national celebration is coming up shortly. And Lafayette sent the key, the main key to the prison, the Bastille, to George Washington when he was president of the United States. He wrote that the key was, quote, the main key to the fortress of despotism. It was a symbol of the Ancien Regime, a symbol of arbitrary power. And he sent it as a tribute which he owes as a son to my adopted father, as an aide-de-camp to my general, as a missionary of liberty to its patriarch. I hope very much that this ship adopts the slogan, missionary of liberty. Now, George Washington received the key as President of the United States, and he hung it in his presidential mansion, both in New York and in Philadelphia, where all the first Congress of the United States would have seen this symbol of another great revolution, and all the first ambassadors as well. And when he retired to the presidency, he came back to Mount Vernon and placed the key in the central passage behind me, where it has hung for 226 years. Over 100 million people have seen it, hanging quietly, this symbol of the birth of modern liberty. And it's been visited by many other dignitaries and heroes of the French nation as well. It was 106 years ago, Mr. Ambassador, that the French minister Vivendi and Field Marshal Joffre visited the key to the Bastille and laid a bronze palm on the tomb of Washington and pledged to fight the Great War to completion in honor of the dead and with their new ally, the United States, so that democracy and not autocracy would rule the future of Europe. And it was a week before Bastille Day on July 7th, 1944, when General de Gaulle visited the tomb of Washington and Key here at Mount Vernon. By the end of August, he was in Paris, liberated from Nazi despotism. And of course, I was honored myself to introduce the key to President and Mrs. Macron, along with First Lady and President Trump, when we celebrated an evening together here in 2018. But not only French heroes have admired and been inspired by the key, Mr. Ambassador, it was nearly 2 years ago, at the end of August 2021, that President and First Lady Zelensky stood in the central passage and looked at the key to the Bastille. We spoke together about the importance of the French Revolution, an inspiration to all nations seeking the blessings of liberty. During their visit, they were celebrating 30 years of independence, and now they're fighting desperately for that independence to share in the legacy of liberty inspired by democratic revolutions. And I very much hope that we together can help them achieve that liberty. So I thank the French people, President Macron, Ambassador Bili for their leadership. I thank Secretary Del Toro for his in strengthening the resolve of NATO and extending the hospitality of the EU so that the values we share, embodied in the generosity, liberality, éclat, and courage of Lafayette, can live on wherever free people struggle for liberty. Thank you all for being here so much. Vive la liberté, vive la France. Let's have 3 cheers for the United States Navy. Hip, hip, hurrah! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! And to the frigate Lafayette, fair weather and following seas. Thank you all.